My name is Bernhard Kimbacher, and I'm the owner at Hive VFX. Previously, I started my career at Image Engine just before the days when they got into the film pipeline. So back in 2007, there was a lot of TV going on, and when we just started building our film pipeline. And through the years, probably the three most known projects we worked on were Neil Blomkamp's movies, starting with District 9, then Elysium and Chappie. And that sort of connection led into me then moving to Oat Studios in 2015. I don't know how many of you know Oat Studios. It's kind of hidden away back there, somebody. So we worked on a bunch of short movies for Neil Blomkamp, and that was kind of my first introduction to try to build something new from scratch, and how can we leverage existing tools, off-the-shelf stuff, to create high-end visual effects. So 2 years after that, I started UMedia. UMedia is a visual effects studio based in Brussels, and in 2017, they wanted to open a facility in Vancouver. So I went over there to help them establish that, and we took a lot of what we learned at Oats to implement it in a more corporate environment and build a pipeline there. And we really were up and running. Within 2-3 weeks, we were up and running enough to work to do 150 shots on the Meg. So that went really well. After that, I went back to Image Engine for a brief stint to supervise the Pokemon movie, which was really nice because after like 3 years of basically playing with new pipelines and hacking things together, it was kind of nice to get back and see what a full established pipeline feels like. So that was a nice break. Until May of this year, when I started the project called Hive VFX. When I first started to play around with opening my own thing and what that would look like, a very smart person told me, when you work on a new idea, don't focus on what you want to do or how you want to do it. Try and focus on why. What's the reason? What pain point do you solve? What can you do different? And to me, in one sentence, that was, imagine a work-life balance where life comes first. And I think, as Matt says as well, I think especially in our industry where we're used to working long hours, working under pressure, maintaining a healthy work-life balance is really a big challenge, I find. So that, to me, in one sentence, was the big reason to try and start something new. And to me, that means three big things. And this is very much my own reasoning. It may mean something different for everybody else. But for me, the first big thing is location independence. When I first started in the industry, I moved from Austria to Vancouver. And back then, it was great. I thought it's like, I have a company that pays for me to fly over to Vancouver. It was really fun. But I think over the years in my career, it kind of switched around a bit and it became really more of a limitation for me where I'm kind of stuck in Vancouver, or I could move to Montreal, I could move to London maybe. So that to me was a big why, like why I want to do this, and I want to really be able to live where I want. And I'm actually in the process right now of moving from Vancouver to Halifax, because of the cloud, really. The second big reason that I want to solve is live more, meaning I'm a big believer in things like the 6-hour workday or the 4-day work week, which I think is seeing some adoption in other industries now. Like people start to see how that is actually a more productive way to work and actually I think leads to more creativity. In our industry, we're struggling a bit to adopt that kind of lifestyle. And I think where the cloud helps with that hugely, and I think one big challenge for studios to adopt it more is we are pressured because of cost to fill the seat. So if you want to fill a seat for 6 hours a day, it's not very efficient. But in the cloud, because it's pay as you go, you pay by the minute. So if you fill a seat for 6 hours, that's okay because your cost after that is gone. And ultimately, and this is more of an overarching big picture thing, can I create a framework, a company, a studio, where people are happy to work, where there's a good work-life balance, I actually like to think of it, instead of a balance, which kind of implies two separate things, I think of it more of a work-life cycle, where one feeds into the other. Because I'm a big believer, if you're not happy at work, it'll feed into your personal life, and vice versa as well. So I think if you're happy in both places, you're really looking at fulfillment on a bigger level. So with those, why do I want to do it? I had to look at, okay, I know now why I want to do it. How can we do it from a technology point of view? And with a studio in the cloud, obviously the biggest thing is you have to work with the cloud, and what does that mean? And I don't want to so much talk about the technical aspects. I think Adrian has done a good job at kind of giving an intro on that. But I think what makes the cloud special today is a certain level of cloud acceptance. You have streaming providers that create more and more content. You have Netflix, you have Amazon. Because they're streaming providers, they already live in the cloud. Their entire workflow is in the cloud. So those studios are very, very happy with visual effects studios also working in the cloud. I've even gotten some feedback where they were saying, like, we'd wish more studios would be in the cloud because that's how we work, and we know it's secure, and they trust it very much. So I think that's a good reason why now and over the next few years, I think that's going to become even more accepted. And the second obvious need you have when working in the cloud is fast internet. Previous speakers have gone a bit into that. And we have had, I think, internet that, bandwidth-wise, as Nick said, like, it's kind of like Netflix. You need like 2 megabits per second. That's not really that big of a challenge these days. What the challenge is, though, I think, is when you work over in the cloud, is latency. And I think that's where we are at a point now in terms of internet availability, where you're not looking at those big enterprise solutions anymore that cost thousands of dollars to get a gigabit connection with low latency. I have a connection to my house that's 1.5 gigabit fiber optic cables, and I pay $100 a month for it. So that is becoming more and more available, and that is, I think, really a new thing these days. And another reason why I think that's what's going to help the cloud take off. And then, of course, it needs somebody to take those pieces and do something with it. And that's where I think the Foundry have found a really good, when they started working on it 6 years ago-ish, say, 5. They found a really good timing to start that development. Because back then, I think a lot of these HAUs weren't figured out yet. But they, I think, had a good eye into the future and started at the right time to have those 6 years to develop it into something that is now, I feel, production ready. And they have just built it in a way that goes very much with the cloud mentality, where they don't have monthly fees. They don't have those big upfront costs. Like, you can sign up for an Athera account, no money down, and you're up and running. And then you literally pay as you go. So the upfront investment is, aside from, say, I don't know, like business expenses, like you need insurance, you need an accountant. Like, you still have upfront expenses, of course, but in terms of technology, there's really not that much. So that led me into May of this year, decide to quit my safe job and try and build my own thing called Hive VFX. And I just quickly want to talk about the cornerstones that I feel are important for doing a studio in the cloud where everybody works remotely, because that you have all these advantages of like cloud and you have the power of the cloud, but it also comes with its own set of challenges. One of the biggest ones is probably how do you collaborate if everybody works in different cities, different time zones. You can't just get up and go and talk to them. So that is probably the biggest challenge, I think, to overcome. But these days, we have these tools, and we've had these tools for a while, from email to Slack to Zoom to CineSync to we have all kinds of fantastic tools to collaborate over wide distances. But I do believe that it takes a certain personality and certain people to be able to work remotely. And that kind of leads me into one big thing that I'm going to try and focus on is accountability. And accountability, I think for some people has a bit of a negative connotation to it, maybe. I think it's a very positive thing, because what it means really is you empower people, I think. If you make somebody accountable and say, like, here's your shot, figure it out, work with the other people to figure it out, you make them accountable, but at the same time, you empower them. And I think that's something that I've been missing a little bit lately in the industry, where, as the workloads become bigger, you need more support structure, you have more coordinators, production managers, where accountability sort of goes away because you're not in control anymore. So that is a big cornerstone that I want to work on. And then keeping it simple. And I don't mean that in terms of work, in terms of the visual effects we do. I don't want to say we only want to do simple work. What I mean is keeping the structure simple, which means I think the cloud enables you to really boil things down to the essence, because you don't have a facility, which means you don't need an IT team, you don't need a facility manager, you don't necessarily need an HR department. Like, you're basically boiling it down so the artist has less around him or her to worry about. So keeping the structure very simple, which I think then again feeds back into collaboration, because if you have less structure around you, I think it's easier to work together. And I also think of it a bit more in a grander, like, business sense. I would like to challenge some of the ideas where business success is very much judged by growth, like how, year one you have X amount of revenue, and then year two you need to grow that by 15% at least to be considered successful. So I wanna challenge that a bit too, and say, like, well, can't we build something that is sustainable, that maybe doesn't grow but also doesn't shrink and is just sustainable? So that's really what I'm trying to build with the Hive. Feel free to check it on the website if you're interested, and thanks for your time.